Hello, and welcome to the Kreative Devices Mobile Podcast, a podcast created for all creative devices users to tell their story and to help bring even more creative awareness to the world. Today, we're joined by the one and only Jon from Sonic Drive Studios. How you doing, brother?
Doing great. How are you, man?
I'm good. I'm happy we
Awesome.
were finally able to sit down and have this one-on-one.
Yeah, finally. Yeah, it's gonna be
Finally.
fun.
It is. I know you're a very busy man. Everyone wants you. You're probably like the leading guy on YouTube right now.
Well, I look at it a little bit more humbly instead of word humbly. But thanks, man. Thanks a lot.
That
And yeah,
works. Yeah.
we're all busy, right? I mean, especially when you have a job, and in my case, when I've got kids and stuff and self-employed. So yeah, I'm always busy. That's for sure.
Yeah. Awesome, man. So, Jon, obviously everyone knows who you are, but just in case there's someone living under a rock somewhere, they never been on YouTube and they don't know you, please tell us who you are and what you do.
All right. So my name's Jon. I live in the Netherlands. Some people don't know that because my accent supposedly is pretty okay, but my father's English. I have a channel on YouTube, which is guitar gear focused, and I like tube amplifiers a lot. I like digital platforms a lot. I like affordable solutions. I like the top of the line stuff and everything in between. And I primarily focus on, let's say, hard rock and metal, high gain stuff primarily, but I try to be, broad in the sense that if I do an amp review, for example, I try to have some clean and more classic and crunchy stuff in there as well. So I say that I'm primarily focused on rock and metal, but it's also kind of broad, I guess, in terms of the styles. And then I do,
Mhm.
comparisons, speaker videos, pedal videos, and anything guitar tone related, basically, or recording, and all that good stuff, all the fun stuff, basically. And that's what I do.
Nice, nice. Well, and how long have you been doing that?
Great question. I think I started around 9 years or so ish. Yeah, so a while, you know. Mhm.
Okay, cool. So we know what you do now. How did you get into that? What started? What was your journey like? Please share that with us.
All right. Let's start at the beginning, I guess. I'll try to make this brief because it's basically like a lifetime. So I was, I think, probably, yeah, 10 years old because this was in 1996, I think. I was
Mm,
in Holland, we call this the basisschool. It's like the school where you are when you're still young. Maybe in the United States, you have like different types of schools, but it's like, I was 10
yes.
years old. What's it
Mm.
called when you're 10 years old in the US?
I think it's elementary school.
Elementary school. Yeah. And we were just playing, doing some games or something, and there was a radio playing. And I heard the song Wonderwall by Oasis, Wonderwall.
Mhm.
Yeah. And for some reason, something, and I really vividly remember this moment, something clicked. And I realized that I wanted to do something with music. And I heard the guitar, that acoustic guitar is just so iconic, really. And how do you say, like very prominent, I guess, in that song, especially that intro, just the guitar. And a friend of mine, he knew how to play the guitar, so he taught me that song and another song, and that really sort of sparked my love for guitar, basically. And I started singing songs, stuff from the radio. Back then, we had a lot of cool stuff on the radio, like Lenny Kravitz or Oasis, of course, and a bunch of pop. I mean, a lot of pop music back then, and rock music was just really well made and stuff, and not all electronic. Which, you know, for somebody who plays guitar, if there's a lot of guitar in music, that's can be very inspiring. So I started learning more songs, and then at a certain point, because of my brother, I got into like more heavy stuff, like Metallica. because he was like a big Metallica fan. And then I think I was like, okay, I need to play electric. So I got myself a Squier, a white Stratocaster, and my uncle, he borrowed me a little TV amp. I think it was called TV Backstage 30 or something. Pretty crappy. But when you cranked the gain, you could get some grit and overdrive. So then I
Mm.
started to rock out. And I'm making this a long story, by the way. Sorry.
It's
And
okay, no worries.
yeah, I mean, when you play guitar, you get interested. I mean, most guitarists, then you get interested in pedals and okay, what's that? I hear an interesting effect there. What's that? And then you
Mm.
know, back then it was like you had to ask friends and stuff like, do you know what this effect is? Or in a guitar store, like, yeah, that's an echo or that's a distortion, and then you would buy like an effect. And at one point I had I think it was a Boss ME5. It's like a super old school multi effect. I think it was digital. No expression pedal, just like four switches and then a bunch of effects. And I started to record myself, so I would plug that directly into the sound card on my old or my dad's computer or whatever, so that I could get some signal, like really raw digital distortion with no cabinet simulation, if you know what I mean. You
I
know,
know all too well.
just the jack cable, and then with one of those adapters to mini jack straight into the computer.
Mm-hmm.
And already, I think I might have been like 12 or something, just a kind of a guess. But already then I started to realize, wow, recording is cool. I liked it. I like that. So I started, uploading Metallica covers. That was really early in for the internet. There was this forum where people would upload their covers and stuff, Metallica covers. And at a certain point, I got an amp, which was a Randolph 4x12 solid state stack. And then somebody told me about the V amp, which was a fake pod. And then I got that. And stuff evolved so that I had more tools to express my creativity. And then I went to the conservatory after high school in Rotterdam, because this was the only thing that I wanted to do, right? Create
Mm.
music and just be a rock star, basically. So I went to the conservatory. I think I was 18 or so, and it was like a very contemporary division, uh, like for people who wanted to play, you know, popular styles and not classic styles and stuff, which
Mm.
was cool. Um, it wasn't 100% my thing because I just wanted to play and I didn't want to learn about a bunch of stuff that I didn't really care for. Some things about the industry or certain genres that I didn't care for. I also didn't really care about reading notes. Um, I had to learn all that stuff there. It just didn't really resonate with me. But then word got out that a famous Dutch band, famous in Holland, it's a small country, but a well-known band here, they were auditioning for a new guitarist. And my teacher was like, yeah, you have to audition. I was like, dude, are you kidding me? But then I said, you know what? Why not? And I did an audition, and I was like 19 years old, and I only had played like a handful of gigs with my old metal band. We did like Metallica covers and stuff. So I wasn't professional at all. But for some reason, after doing a couple auditions, I landed that gig. And then all of a sudden, after a year of being in the conservatory, I was in a professional Dutch rock band. And we toured, and I was in that band for 5 years. And I basically experienced what everybody dreams of what everybody dreams of when they think of experiencing being a musician. It was very local to my country, but we also played some shows in the Caribbean and some in Germany and stuff. So we did do some traveling, and we went to Canada once, but it was mostly local. But it was still amazing. I played all the best venues in my country, basically, and had a blast. That was really cool. Made some records. And then when the band quit in 2010, I really wanted to keep making music. But I also had to find a way to make money, of course. So I went teaching at a music school. And then I guess 12 or 13 years ago or so, I bought myself an Axe Effects, and I met a couple people online. And one of them is Kevin from the brand Ownhammer. He makes impulse responses. Really great guy, really good friend of mine. And I made like clips with his IRs and stuff, just for fun. And then at a certain point, I did some sort of small jobs for him and stuff. And at one point, he was like, "Yeah, why don't you go on YouTube?" And then I went on YouTube, and I didn't really have a band at that point anymore. That's another whole story. But I just thought, you know what? Because I did SoundCloud stuff, and then I went from SoundCloud to YouTube because that was just another way of getting my music out there and also having some video imagery along with it. And that kind of snowballed. And now, after 9 or 10 years or so, I'm doing this for a living, and I have an insane room in my house with a bunch of amps and stuff. And that's like the short version. Sorry, that was very long.
That's okay. So that band you mentioned, I remember watching a video that you put out where you told a story about you were in a band and you went to Brazil and some crazy stuff happened. That's the same band?
Yeah. We were called Entwine,
Okay.
and it was a really cool band. There were a couple dudes from the Caribbean, like our singer was from Aruba, and our other guitar player and our old bassist, they were from St. Martin. So it
Mhm.
was like a very diverse group, and we played like heavy rock with Caribbean influences, which was a little bit new to me because I'd never played stuff like reggae and stuff before I joined that band. But I really learned a lot from that, and we did a lot of cool things. Yeah, great stuff.
Okay. Awesome. Well, I
Yeah,
gotta say, man, I've been watching your videos and your riffing is top notch, man. And I enjoy the fact that you're putting in more lead stuff now as well. You know, I know a lot of other people have been mentioning that. Really good stuff.
thanks, man. Thank you,
You're
thank you.
welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome.
Yeah, you
So,
know,
okay.
when oh, sorry. Yeah. Yeah,
No,
when
I'm,
it
I'm
comes to
done. Please.
the riffs are just, so important to me, but not only the riffs, but also like composition. Because even though my songs, mostly the songs that I do on my videos are like 1.5 minutes long. That's
Mhm.
like the length that I've been keeping them for the past couple years or so. But it's always important to have like a beginning, a middle, and an end. I don't just want to do a riff and that's it. I write mini songs basically. So that's just something that I really enjoy. And I think that that comes from the very beginning, from that, period when I was listening to bands like Oasis and just singing songs and, oh, intro, verse, chorus, and discovering that whole thing. So that's just something that I love. And even though it's in an interesting format, since it's like short songs and instrumental and really riff focused, but that's just my creative passion, so to speak. But I really, appreciate your kind words. Thank you.
No, but I mean them, man. Your riffs are awesome. And I like the lead stuff. I hope to see more of that.
Thanks. Yeah,
Yeah.
I enjoy that too. But it's a bit of a challenge, but I'm working it in there.
Now, I don't know how in depth you would want to go on this particular podcast, but I do know that you made another video talking about an issue that you have
Mhm.
that prevents you from playing guitar sometimes.
Yeah.
How is that with playing leads and the riffs and stuff that you write?
hmm
If you want to talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's no problem. I mean, a couple months ago, I made a video, for me to just get that story out. And now that it's out, people can watch that on my channel if they're interested. It's about a rare condition that I have in my left hand. It's called musician's dystonia, sometimes referred to as vocal dystonia, which is a very broad term. But
Mm.
I think it was like, yeah, around 9 years ago or so, around the time when I started my channel, that I began to notice some issues in my hand, that my muscles weren't really doing what they were supposed to be doing when I was playing guitar. And then after a lot of stress and trying to figure out what was wrong, I learned that I had that particular condition, musician's dystonia. And then I had to quit my band because I was in a smaller unknown band, still playing rock and writing songs and stuff, but more we tried to be professional, but it was basically, for fun. But I had to quit that, and I had to quit teaching a couple years after that as well. So that's, kind of messed up in a way, but because of the fact that that door closed, another door, I guess, opened because I somehow found a way to still make a living and to still, work with guitar tones and guitars every single day. But I'm not able to play in a band or something like that because it's just too much of a challenge. So lead guitar stuff, especially
Mhm.
intricate stuff, is just really hard, So I have to really force myself sometimes physically to get certain licks out of my system. Um,
Yeah.
but that's just life, and I tend to look at it in a positive way in general. Sometimes it's a little bit more difficult, but I'm just very grateful and happy for, you know, for the fact that I get to do this for a living still, which is kind of like a miraculous thing because a lot of people who have this condition, they have to quit because they play in an orchestra, for example, and then
Mhm.
all of a sudden they can't be a professional musician anymore, and it's like game over. So, yeah, it's a challenge, but at the same time, I'm still doing it.
Yeah, that's got to be tough. I think I talked to you about my situation. It's a little different. I have what's called cubital tunnel in my elbow
Hmm.
and carpal tunnel in my forearm. So whenever I try to play sometimes, like even now, I'm not doing anything. But I noticed once I started picking the guitar up little by little, not every day, but every other day or whenever I get a chance to, my arm just hurts for no reason now. Like I could be doing nothing. My arm could be down. I go to lift it and it feels like there's a huge weight and it just hurts from my forearm, my elbow, my wrist. And it's just so annoying. And it's like when I try to play the guitar, it doesn't do what I want it to do. I have to probably it's I don't know how to explain it. It's sort of like I have to work it out. Like if I force it for a certain amount of time, then it'll warm up or loosen up and then I'll be able to play. So the doctors explained that the nerve that's here in this elbow is being pinched by the muscles and also in my forearm. So I guess strain on it is not good, but I realize if I work it out, like if I exercise it, after a while it'll loosen up. It won't be so tight, and then I can play. But no matter how loose it gets or how much I play, there's always times where I feel like I'm limited to what I can do versus what I could have done in the past.
Hmm.
I noticed that when I was playing a couple years back for a video that's on my social media. You'll see it on my Instagram, or I think I put it on YouTube as well. I hadn't played guitar for probably about a year, and then I recorded that video. So I started practicing about Friday for a few hours, Saturday for a few hours, and then Sunday for a few hours before I actually recorded that. So then when I recorded it, I did 3 takes, and the third take is the one that I uploaded. Obviously, it's not perfect because I haven't been playing guitar for a while when I made that. And I noticed I was trying to, see him happy and enjoying it, but the struggle of trying to get those notes out, especially at the end when I had to do like those arpeggio lines, it was there, but it wasn't the way it should have been, So again, it's something different, but I understand the struggle. It sucks. It really does, and something like that, it can be disheartening when music and guitar is such a strong part of you, when it feels like it's a big part of your life to have that kind of limitation. It made me want to give up at one point, but I just love it too much, even though I don't do it now like I should, because I've been busy with this. But I'm gonna get back into it for sure, more and more this year. I'm gonna get back to the guitar, and hopefully I'll finish the music that I started years ago, and maybe even make some new ones. We'll see what happens.
Dude, first of all, sorry you have to deal with that. That sucks. And thanks for sharing that with me. I mean, for me to share my story, it took me literally 9 years of doubting, like, should I tell this to my viewers? Should I talk about this or not? So respect for you for just talking about that, first of all. A
Thank you, thank
couple
you.
things that come to mind. Like one thing that comes to mind is like when I put that video up, I got so many replies from people who are dealing with their own similar issues, but also other issues. And I
Mm.
guess like a lot of people are dealing with things similar to what we are dealing with. So we're not alone. You know what I mean? Sometimes you can
Yeah,
feel very alone and isolated when you have something like this. Like nobody cares. I'm just here and this sucks and nobody can help me. And so it's good to connect with others. So that is one thing. Another thing that comes to mind is that, you know, one thing that I learned because of this whole thing is like I started to approach music very differently. Uh, and maybe you can relate, but before I got this condition, I was like all about, well, not all about, but like technical stuff. I listened to a lot of Dream Theater and stuff, and I
mhm.
was more focused on performance and, showing people how good I was or something. Maybe a little bit ego driven. You want to play fast, and that's cool. It's also fun. It's a lot of fun. But now, in my case, like my focus has shifted much more to, in terms of the music, more to simple, groove and like cool chord structures. And like I said, like composition of my mini songs and tone. Tone is just something that I love a lot. And sometimes people say, like, yeah, just practice. Tone doesn't matter. And then I'm like, no, dude, whatever makes you happy, whatever inspires you, that is what matters, whether it's tone, whether it's like shredding or whatever. So, whatever you're struggling with, I'm absolutely positive that you will find a way to still, get a lot of joy and satisfaction out of it because it doesn't all have to be very technical. You know what I mean? So you'll
Yeah.
you'll you'll find a way, definitely.
I agree. I agree. And thank you, and like you, I was into technical stuff, fast playing. I still am. I'm not,
Hmm.
the fast playing, if it's musical, right? I
Yeah.
don't like to play fast for the sake of playing fast. Like my days of Yngwie Malmsteen and Necrophagist and all that stuff, those days are gone. I'm not in my 20s anymore. I still like it, but I don't care about, ooh, look at all the amazing stuff I can do on guitar. Now I care more about music, right? And again, there's nothing wrong with it. There are a lot of amazing
Hmm.
players out there that can play at incredible speeds, but I want to hear music. Sometimes I'll watch, I don't remember his name off the top of my head, but there's a young boy that got famous for playing these fast shred lines on guitar at his age. But then he switched and started playing blues and more musical stuff. And that's when he really blew up and took off. And I was just like, wow, this kid is amazing. Like he's playing these lines so soulfully. There's so much emotion and passion in his playing. That is what reaches people. Music evokes an emotion, right? That's how you're going to reach the majority of people because not everyone's a guitar player. Not everyone's
Yeah.
going to be impressed by super shredding and stuff like that. But if you can make some music that makes people feel something, you'll have a much bigger audience. I
Yeah,
always
it's more
say,
relatable.
exactly,
Yeah.
you know, people love grooves that they can move to, something that makes them move however you want to move. If you have melodies that people can hum and sing along to, you know, those are all elements of a great song. You know,
Yeah. 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 Yeah, it's funny. Like sometimes I'm a little bit self-conscious. Like, oh, today I wrote something that's fun, but it's like so simple. People are gonna think it's too simple. But then people are like,
Mm.
"Wow, that's such a cool riff." And then that sometimes really surprises me. Like, oh, they do like it, despite the fact that I'm in between all these other people on YouTube, all these other guys who can play really fast and really technical. I'm just here with a couple power chords. But for some reason, people still resonate with that, which I'm happy for, because otherwise, what could I do? But there's room for everything, like you said. I mean, the fast playing is great. I mean, I also still love listening to Dream Theater. I love
Mm.
Meshuggah, Devi, and that's a lot of stuff, that I listened to when I was younger as well. So that's never going to go away. But I'm probably a little bit too old to really appreciate like the Instagram shred guitarists. It's just that's like I'm too old for that shit, I guess. But there's nothing wrong with it.
Right. I understand, believe me. And I've met several of them, and they're really nice guys. And I am genuinely impressed at what they're able to do on the guitar. But after a certain amount of time, I want to hear something musical. Like it's cool for, I could watch a song or two, but I don't know if I could sit through an entire album of just super shredding. It's
Yeah.
just, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if it's in the right context and if it's like sprinkled through, like if you're listening to a solo from John Petrucci, sometimes or a lot of times there's a lot of melody in there, and then he,
Mhm.
he follows the chord voicings really well, and then he'll put like a very cool bit in there that's like, whoa, that was cool. And then it does
Mhm.
something because it's like there are peaks and valleys, and it's not just like shredding all the way through. It's just knowing when to do it and how to place it in the context of the music. And then it can be really great to listen to, of course. Yeah, it's all about
Exactly.
context.
Yeah. And that's everything is like that. I feel that with, like you said, John Petrucci, you mentioned Steve Vai. Um, I like guys like Greg Howe and Marty Friedman and, Richie Kotz. So many guys we could be naming people forever and ever. But that's that's how you get people's attention. If you're on 10 the entire time, 10 doesn't become 10 anymore. You know what I mean? So you kind of have to build up to something, uh, give people something to look forward to. Like Eddie Van Halen, everyone knows he was an amazing guitar player. He wasn't on 10 all the time. When he played something that was amazing, you're like, oh man, that's Eddie. But the anticipation, you were waiting for it. Steve Vai and all these other guys, the same thing. You know,
Yeah,
it's like I think people, you never want to just give too much at once. In any context. I don't think it's beneficial after a certain amount of time.
I
But
agree.
again, everyone is free to do whatever they want to do.
Of
You know.
course. And that is so important, dude, because like on the internet, and this is like a broader subject, but people often say, they say things like, it doesn't matter, you know, how your tone is as long as you can play, just practice, or the audience doesn't care, or people make all these statements like this is important, that is not important, dude. There's no rule. Like whatever just makes you happy and whatever inspires you and whatever makes you feel good, that's what matters. Even if it's just like kicking your guitar or whatever, I'm just making something up, and if that makes a noise and if that makes you happy, whatever, that's cool.
Yeah.
There are no rules. I hate it when people make claims that, hey, I have to do it like this. You can't do this. Dude, it's music. This is your opportunity to be free and to accept that everybody in music is free to do whatever they want. You know what I mean? So, yeah,
Absolutely.
mini rant
Absolutely.
there.
And I don't know. I think tone matters. That's maybe a personal thing for me. I think tone does matter. Because you can be a great player, but if your tone's horrible, I'm not going to want to listen.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
you could be a bad player, but if your tone is good, I might pay attention a little longer.
yeah, yeah, man. Guitar tone. That's like, um, that's like, how do you say it when you have like a subject that you can talk about for hours? Like, yeah, that's
Yeah,
like whew,
it's never ending.
never ending.
It's
Yeah, yeah,
never ending guitar tone. Oh man.
but it's fun.
So now we know more about you, where you started from, and you said you were using your dad's computer at the time. When did you get your own serious computer for recording, and what was it?
Wow. I don't really have like a solid answer for that. I mean, I think at first when I was still living at my parents' place, I would just get like, because my dad, he worked with computers, so we were always like a little bit earlier with that stuff. And then he
Mm.
would get a new computer and I would just get the old one. But I mean, the really serious stuff, yeah, not. I mean, when I started living by myself, when I moved out of my parents' house, but then still, I wasn't really paying attention to like specs and stuff. As long
Mm.
as I could just record, I remember this app that I used to use. I was just so ignorant of how this stuff really worked, like Cool Edit Pro or something. Does that ring a bell? Yeah, it was
Uh,
like a free audio recording program and editor, but it didn't have a grid and stuff. So you just
okay.
record it and hope for the best, basically. And I used that for quite a long time. And then I started to, program drums and stuff. And then I realized, I need different software and stuff. And I started searching and stuff. But I guess maybe, couple years or maybe 5, 6 years before I started my channel, I guess that's when I started to really get more serious and maybe, build some computers with my friends and I started at one point. I ordered a PC with like the best, best CPU and the best graphics card. And as soon as you get into that, you're automatically going to be more aware of, what those specs are and what they can do for you. Um, and then at one point, I had modified one old desktop. This feels like a very long time ago, by the way. And then came Creative Devices, of course. I was having some serious annoyances with my previous desktop.
Mhm.
Um, and then, well, this is another story. Well, we can get into that now.
Okay.
So the desktop, like, I bought this new desktop with a glass case, right? And this is,
Mm.
I don't know how many years, let's say 5, 6 years ago, just a guess. And I really noticed that I was getting interference into my pickups because all the
Mm.
EMI, like the electromagnetic interference, was getting into my pickups. And then somebody on the internet was like, "Yeah, you have a glass case that's not shielding the interference properly." And I was like, "Damn!" And I started looking online, and all the cases had a glass door now.
Mm.
So I tried to like do the copper tape to try to what's it, insulate? Is that the proper word?
Yes.
And that didn't work at all. And I just had to deal with a bunch of that stuff. So my desktop was like, I don't know, 7 feet, like in the corner, as far away as I could get it, from me, so that the interference was at a minimum. And I also
Mm.
was having a lot of trouble with interference noise coming from through the USB cables into my audio interfaces because I use a lot of modeling platforms for recording my DI tracks. That just works pretty well for me. So a bunch of stuff like that, and stuff would fill, and then I'd had to put like a new drive, and I didn't really enjoy working with the desktop, heavy and unwieldy. And then I was made aware of Creative Devices, and there was like an opportunity to get a laptop, and I started thinking, and I'm a little bit stubborn, with anything that is really new. It takes a little bit of time for me to accept it. I was thinking like, I'd never used a laptop in a professional manner. So I was just like, not going to be as powerful as a desktop, but it could be fun, to do some testing with and to have a portable computer. So I was like, you know what? Let's get one of these Creative Devices laptops and let's see what happens. Fast forward like a couple of months later, and my desktop was already gathering dust. So yeah, because of you and your company, I started to realize that you can definitely do anything you want in a professional level in terms of the processing. and all that stuff on a laptop. It's sitting on my desk here. I have two of your laptops, of course. My main one is sitting on my desk here. My big screen is connected to it, and I do everything on my laptop. I haven't turned my desktop on now for probably a year or so. I don't remember exactly when we got in touch, but probably a year ago
Mm,
or so ish. I don't know. So
I
now I'm
seem like
really serious with my computers.
it seems like it's been a while. I'm trying to remember uh, when our first conversation was. It might have been the end of 2023, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But I'm very grateful, man, for that. I'm very
Yes.
grateful to be a customer, and I'm grateful to know you because Creative Devices is so awesome. I love it so much, man.
Thank you.
I, I,
Thank
I
you.
couldn't do anything without those laptops. Let's anything like my video editing, my music. I do everything on those laptops, and I wonder if people realize that that's possible. I mean, I didn't realize before I got the laptop
Mm.
that it was possible, and now it's like, duh, of course it works. But yeah, we need to raise awareness.
We definitely do. And that's pretty much all I try to do is let people know that creative devices exists. You don't have to spend too much money.
This is the perfect segue to tell us and to tell me a little bit about how you started this company, because this is a longer story that I find very interesting. So maybe
Okay.
you would like to tell me a little bit about that, like how did you get started with Creative Devices and why, and what was the goal?
Sure. Uh, Now let me see how I can not make this way too long.
Do your
But
thing, man. Do your thing.
so I'm a guitar player, as you know, and started moving away from half stacks. They were obviously big and heavy. You got to lug them back and forth when you go out and play shows. The last band I was in, we were touring as well, and I didn't want to do it. So I was constantly trying to find something that I could take with me that would have a sound that I was satisfied with, that didn't sound like a digital modeler, because the digital stuff at the time wasn't very good.
When are
I
we
had
talking?
a
What year?
oof, I it was years ago. I don't want to date myself, but it was years ago, you know. So it was more than 10 years ago. Let's just put it
Mhm.
that way. Um I had a Zoom pedal, the G9 2TT. It had 2-foot switches and two tubes in it. All right. And
Okay.
it wasn't the best sounding thing, but because of the tubes, I could saturate it to make it sound less digital and make it sound more like an amp coming through speakers or even front of house, right? So I would end up using that, uh, just take that in the bag and with my guitar, and I could run out and do shows. I wanted something better, and I started putting together an analog pedal board. Laney had put out a little micro preamp that had tubes in it, and I got that. I think it was the IRT Pulse or something like that. I changed the tubes in that. I switched out the 12AX7s for 57, 51s. They're direct 12AX7 replacements. They're just they have more headroom, so they don't break up as easily. So you can get more clean and more natural compression. I'm nerding out right now,
Oh,
guitar player
I
stuff.
love it.
And then I would just run pedals through that, and it would sound like an amp because I had another pedal that I could put my impulse responses in, the ones that I liked, and I could just run that through front of house, and it sounds like you're miking a cabinet, but I don't have to bring all of that. So over time, it evolved, things kept changing, and the goal stayed the same: have a sound that I was satisfied with in the studio that I could take out live and just, it one sound that easy. When I owned my studio, there was a couple times I had to go out and record bands in different locations. So I had to get a laptop. Now I'm recording them. The laptop's not powerful enough to do any real mixing or mastering. I could do a little rough mix, give them something to listen to, but I have to wait till I come back to the studio to work on it. I didn't like that. It took up too much time. And I was thinking to myself, because maybe I'm a little bit of a problem solver, there has to be a better way to do this. So now I'm trying to find a laptop that's as powerful as a desktop that I can have my entire setup the same way I have in my studio. I can work with it there. And then if I have to go somewhere else, I can just take the laptop with me and work wherever I have to work. Just like with the guitar, same sound, same thing with the computer, same everything on the go. At the time, laptop processors started getting better. But in order to get a more powerful processor, something that could rival a desktop, it only came in a gaming laptop. And with a gaming laptop, you're spending hundreds of dollars extra for a graphics card that you're not going to use for audio. Not only was it not beneficial for audio, but a lot of times it was hurtful in a way, because the NVIDIA drivers used to help create latency and interference in systems that were designed for audio. So I would end up disabling the NVIDIA graphics card while I'm using it for audio. And after a while, things got better. Some companies started making laptops with more powerful processors with integrated graphics, which was great. But there were things that were missing, right? And there sometimes these devices that are made for consumers, they put too much stuff in it because they don't know what you're going to use it for. And a lot of that stuff you don't want for audio, or you don't need for audio, or it interferes with stuff like touch screens are great, but the latency they introduce it's not worth it. And when you're dealing with audio, you want the lowest latency possible when recording, and you just want basically only what's needed. Long story short, people that saw me running my studio off of a laptop, my last 2 computers in the studio before I closed it were laptops. And people would come by and they'd be like, how are you running a studio off of a laptop? It was just unheard of at the time. And when they saw what I was able to do with it, they were like, this is crazy. I have to get one of these. Help me find a laptop that can, record music and all this stuff. But again, it was expensive to buy one of these computers. And I'm helping people, and I'm thinking there has to be an easier way. There has to be an easier way, because technology is advancing. I'm sure it doesn't really cost this much money. And through all my searches, I end up coming across some manufacturers who make computers for other big name companies. And I was lucky enough to know someone who could let me talk to the right person. And, they loved what I wanted to do. They said, yeah, no one's catering to creatives. Everything is about gamers. That's a great idea. Well, what do you want to do? I said, well, we should do this, that, and the third. And I started saying it in a way for them to do it, because, it's not something that I wanted to do myself. I just wanted someone to make a computer for creators. And they were listening to me like, yeah, okay, we can do that. What else do you want to do? And so instead of them taking it, they're asking me, like, what do I want to do? And I'm just thinking, it's not what I want to do, but it seems like if I don't do it, it's not going to get done. So I said, okay, well, first of all, the most important thing in a computer is the processor. Let's find the most powerful processor you can get your hands on at a reasonable price, because that was the whole thing. I didn't want these things to be expensive. There's no reason people should be paying way too much money for a computer. I got a list of all the processors they could get, and I found the most powerful one for the price. At the time was the 12700H. It's a 20-thread monster CPU. And when I'm looking at the specs on the sheet, it was outperforming the newer 13th gens that had just come out at the time, the Apple M1s that had just come out, and all these other processors. And I'm like, can we put this in everything? They said, yeah, we can do that. So I said, all right, well, let's put this in a board that has expandable RAM and expandable storage, because a lot of computers, they were taking that away. Everything was built in. You have to order exactly what you want and it's sorted on the board. I didn't want that. I thought that was a ridiculous idea because I used to build and repair desktops. I want to be able to put in and take out and swap out something if it goes bad. I don't want to have to replace the entire laptop. And if it's something that I don't want to do, I'm sure other people out there wouldn't want to do it either. So I basically designed these as if I was designing it for myself, assuming that other people would appreciate it. And that's what I did. You know, the first one was the Notebook Pro 16. So all the numbers basically coincide with the size of the screen. So the 16s or the 16-inch, the 14s or the 14-inch. And they all had Intel chips originally until we came out with the A, which is for AMD, because AMD APU. So we have an A16 and an A14, which have the AMD chips. So we had the Notebook Pro 16 first, and then people loved it, and they said, well, what about people who want to do graphics? We need a dedicated graphics card. And I'm like, we just spent all this time to make sure we didn't have a dedicated graphics card, but now we have to have one for people. So they said, you know what, it's fine. We're designing a new laptop that can hold a dedicated graphics card. They showed me what it's going to look like. I said, that's great. Let's do this, that, and the third. They said, okay. The first one came out and it was great. Turned out to be the G16. The G stands for graphics because it has a dedicated graphics card. So now we have the regular 16, the graphics 16, and then someone said, well, do you have anything smaller than a 16? I want something more portable. So now we have to make a 14-inch. So we went through a few different 14s. And so we have a 14 now, and we have an AMD 14 as well. And then people wanted different things. The Mac Mini was popular, you know, for a long time because it's a little tiny thing that you can just put on a desk. You don't have to have a big tower. You can put it in a bag and take it with you anywhere if you don't want a laptop. And I saw a lot of companies making these little mini PCs. And I said, you know what? We can do that. The problem with the mini PCs are they're severely underpowered. So I said, well, let's just put even more powerful processors in the mini PCs. Why not? So that's what we did. We put even more powerful processors in our minis. So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that goes on in between, but we'd be here all day. You know, I was grateful enough to have wonderful people such as yourself take a chance on us, and you know, I'm very grateful. And you know, I think we have created a great friendship. You know, we've had several conversations, both video and voice. I'm looking forward to going over later this year and see you in person. And you know, and I was able to meet other great people because of this, and I love it. You know, knowing that I was actually able to help. That was the reason why I started this, to be able to help get people these devices that they weren't spending $3,000 to $6,000 on from some other company. I think it's absolutely ridiculous, you know. But and here we are today.
Dude, you're doing a great job, man. And I mean, you're being a little bit humble because there are some legends that are using your products as well. I don't know if we can name them, but you know who I'm talking about.
We can name anyone that uses our products. They're on board 100%. So you
Yeah,
can name
man.
anyone you want.
I mean, Jeff Loomis, he's a legend, right? So
He
there's
is.
plenty more where that came from, and a bunch of my friends are also now using Creative Devices and all loving it for various reasons. So
Yeah.
yeah, I hope you can keep on doing this for as long as possible because I'm
Thank
gonna
you.
need you. I'm gonna need you.
I don't plan on going anywhere. You know what's funny? In the beginning, people were saying, "Oh, new companies never work," and blah 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 blah. But here's the thing: no one else is doing what we're doing. Everyone's catering to gamers. It's not that we don't care about gamers. It's just that since everyone is doing it, what are we going to offer, right? No
Hmm.
one's catering about to creators. I'm a creator, so I'm taking this personally. Like I said, these are designed for me as what I would want to use for myself, and I use them, right?
Yeah.
And I'm happy with them. I can honestly tell you the best devices I've ever used. I'm
Yeah, man.
happy that other people appreciate them as well. And that was the point, to be able to help people get devices that they need to accomplish whatever creative task they want, you know. And I was lucky enough to have wonderful people such as yourself help me to introduce it to the world and get other people to do the same. And, you know, now we have other musicians and other producers and other people all over, you know, that love our devices and use them every day, you know.
Congrats.
And
I'm
thank
really
you.
impressed, man. It's
Thank
not
you.
an easy job, I think, to start a company like that, especially not in a market that has like, giants, if we're talking about like Apple and Microsoft and all those computer companies. It's impressive, and I really appreciate that you're speaking to the niche as well of just the creative people who just need like a solid computer for a good price, because we haven't even really touched on that, because that's important as well. I mean, if you're going to get a Creative Devices laptop, you're not going to bust the bank, you know, and you're going to get better specs than probably most other options will offer you for that price as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that was the goal. The goal was not to be like everyone else, because everyone else is trying to force whatever the new, here's the new this and the new latest and greatest that. But as we know, newer doesn't always mean better. It definitely means more expensive, but it doesn't always mean better. And not everyone wants AI integration in their laptop. They just want a computer to be the tool that it was intended for, to use. And if you want AI, there's Chat GPT and all these other things out there. Why are you going to pay extra for something that you're not going to be using on a regular basis? Performance is priority. You want something that's going to perform. So if I can get you something that's going to outperform whatever the new thing is for less money, what's the problem? Not only that, but I've had several new things that, because they're new, they haven't been properly tested. All the bugs and kinks haven't been worked out, and you have a whole bunch of issues with it. Like right now, what's going on with all these 14th gen Intel chips? It doesn't make sense. Why are you paying all this money for something that's supposed to be really fast, but you have all these issues with it? You know, um, I'm not saying anything bad about anyone. I like Intel. We use their chips. I like AMD. We use their chips. Nvidia. We use their GPUs. You know, all these companies make good stuff, but nothing is perfect. You know, everyone has bought something, whether it's a cell phone or whatever it is, and maybe you just got a bad one out of the batch, you know, but sometimes it's more than just one, and you have to wait for that generation to go out before you can get something else, like Windows. Remember when they came out with Windows 8? That was horrible. It was a nightmare, Windows 8. And we
I
had to
never
wait for
used
them
it.
to get right. It was, oh gosh, you're lucky. It was terrible. And we had to wait because I got a computer at the time and it came with 8. And I had to take 8 off of it and put 7 on it because I couldn't use it. And I didn't leave 7 until Windows 10 came out. And that's when I was finally able to upgrade. Like right now, I can't stand 11 with a passion. I don't like it. I really hope that they fix all the stuff that they ruined in the new Windows 12, right? All the stuff they took out of that was in Windows 10, I hope they put it all back in Windows 12. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. So,
I
and that's
have
another
never
thing. A
used
lot,
11.
you're not missing anything. Trust me. You know, and that was another issue. A lot of the new computers are only Windows 11 compatible. If you try to put Windows 10 on it, there are no drivers supported for the hardware. And I couldn't deal with that. And I know a lot of people hate that. I've seen complaints everywhere. So that was one of the things that I had to make sure that all of our devices are Windows 10 compatible so that if anyone who's like me, who is a creative and you're specific about things and you want to really be able to go in there and customize it to, for you, you need Windows 10 because 11 just can't do it.
Yeah.
And it has to be compatible. So all of our devices are Windows 10 compatible fully.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that. I mean, obviously, because I still use Windows 10 and I'm just familiar with that and it works, you know.
Mm.
So, one funny thing, I was like, these past 2 days, I was working on like Tonex captures, you know,
Mm.
and my friend Dan, Lonely Rocker, shout out to him, he uses your laptop for that as well. And it's like
Yes.
funny, like I know people who use different brands of computers, let me just say it like that. And then
Hmm.
when they make a capture of an amplifier and they use the advanced setting, takes hours. And for me, it only takes like 14 minutes. So that was pretty awesome. There's something about the software, and it's really well compatible with NVIDIA cards or something. I'm not technical, but it works really well.
Yeah, it works with NVIDIA as well as AMD graphics. Um, the the Apple graphics, I think Apple doesn't allow use for developers or something like that. I'm not sure exactly what's going on. Anything Apple, it's not. I'm not anti-Apple. I just want to make that very clear. I'm not anti-Apple, but I don't have any Apple products. It's just not my thing,
Yeah,
right?
same here.
Um, yeah. So I don't really know what's going on with them, what they're doing. I couldn't tell you. I've tried using them. I have a MacBook, which is an expensive paperweight at this point. I mean, when I learned to use it, it was cool, but I didn't like the limitations, and that's why I went back to Windows.
We're not hating on you guys, Apple users out there. Don't click away.
Not,
We're
not
not
at
hating
all.
on you. Use whatever
No, I
works for
mean,
you, you know.
exactly, exactly.
So I do have a question, and this is going to sidetrack a little bit, but you mentioned
Okay.
that back in the day you were using an amp sim, you know, on your old laptop for your rig and stuff. What are your thoughts on like guitar plugins nowadays in terms of the amp modeling? Because effects, you know, effects have been fine in the digital realm for quite a while now, I think, for the most part, you know, delays and modulation and stuff. But what are your thoughts on the state of amp modeling versus analog tube amplifiers?
I think that amp modeling has come a very long way from how it was when it started. All digital technology in general has come a long way from when it started because when DAWs first started and digital EQs and compressors and all that stuff, they were horrible. You know, they were definitely clean, more transparent sounding, but they were lifeless, flat, dull, whatever word you want to use to describe it. It didn't sound like music, and people didn't like them. And after a while, they realized in trying to make it perfect, they ruined it. So now everyone's modeling all this analog gear that they were complaining about in the beginning. You know, like I said, newer doesn't always mean better. And gear, as far as amp models, I think the original, or let's just say the analog version of whatever, you can have the best emulation you want. And there's some very impressive ones out there. The actual analog gear is always going to have a different sound. It's always going to have a more truer inherent character, quality, however you want to describe it. You'll always be able to, in some way, notice the difference. Not saying that the digital is going to be bad, but there's always going to be something that the digital just can't recreate. Now, because digital has gotten so good, you could take, instead of one plugin, maybe take that plugin and add something on top of it and the sound even closer to the original thing. which is still going to be cheaper than if you had to pay, I don't know, $30,000 for a Fairchild or something like that, you know, whatever they cost these days. And you can have an infinite amount of them on an infinite amount of tracks. So it's definitely the way to go. All the hardware that I had, I got rid of all of it. All of it. From when I had my studio, I got rid of everything because stuff had gotten so good at that point. The
Yeah.
only thing hardware that I invest in, besides the right interface, because it's important, are preamps. Preamps make a difference. A lot of people will tell you, it doesn't make a difference. You can get anything. No. The preamp is what your sound is being recorded through. That is going to imprint on your sound going into your DAW. So you want to make sure the tone that's imprinted on your sound is a good one. You don't want it to be a bad one. And a lot of people now are making the same mistakes that they were making before, trying to find whatever the cleanest, most transparent, crystal clear preamps. And then they're realizing that it doesn't really work because now you got to spend all this money on vintage gear to get that sound back. Just run it through something vintage, you know? It doesn't have to be something really expensive. A lot of people like 1073s. It's really not my jam. I think they break up too much. The ISA 110 is my favorite preamp. It's inexpensive and it's going to give you a phenomenal sound. If you want to spend a little more money and you want something that might appear to seem a little more high fidelity, any of the Rupert Neve Designs Portico preamps will do. Even their Shelford, you know, if you like that 1073-ish sound, you know, the Shelford's good. But yeah, make sure when you record through a decent preamp, and then everything else can be done in the box because technology is just so amazing today.
You know, it's funny, I was, of course, also when I started recording digitally and stuff and mixing, when I started to get serious with mixing, I was getting good results, but there was always something like missing. And then at one point, Slate Digital came out with the VCC, the first version, like the Virtual Console collection. And I bought that. I was really intrigued. And that sort of changed a lot for me because all of a sudden, even though it's digital, it's a really good emulation, I think, of like running your tracks through analog consoles. It started to, even though it's subtle, it made a big difference for like the sound of my mixes. And then they came out with the virtual tape machine as well. And those two plugins for when I do mixing and stuff, and also my drum mixes and whatever. Like, I have to use them. If I take those off, everything is just so pokey, and so very too transparent, you know what I mean? And it glues everything together nicely and it adds a little bit of warmth in the low end. And not to the extent that, people are gonna hear my guitars in a different way or anything like that. It more has like an effect on like the mix as a whole, like how it sounds glued together. It's not like super obvious in terms of, wow, now the sound has a lot more 400 hertz or something like that. You know what I mean?
I know
But
what you
it's
mean.
just,
Yeah.
it adds a little something. And I mean, I've never done any mixing or tracking through an analog console or anything like that, but I can definitely imagine that that would have the same or probably a better impact than using those plugins or similar plugins because it saturates in a very smooth way. Not like how people would expect if you say the word saturate. People sometimes think that it instantly has to sound distorted, which is of course not
Right.
the case per se. You can smoothen the
No.
peak. You can just make those peaks nice and smooth to even things out without hearing distortion artifacts. And
Yeah.
for me, that's like really important, you know. And I can see why that could be very rewarding doing that in the actual analog realm with preamps and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm. You hit the nail on the head, my friend.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is. it smoothens out those peaks, just like you said. The subtle
Yeah,
saturation, and that's what it is. It's subtle saturation. Now,
yeah,
the thing that people were trying to get away from, like harmonic distortion, noise from the devices, transformers, whatever. All of those things help create that character in the sound, and people don't even realize it. It's like if you like the plugins you just mentioned, when you put them on and then when you bypass them, the difference you notice. Now imagine your guitar itself going through something that's going to coat that sound and make it sound more pleasing. And every instrument is coated in something that's going to make it sound more pleasing. By the time you go to mix it, it's going to be easier to mix because everything already sounds pleasing.
yeah, yeah,
And that's the importance of having good preamps.
yeah. I can definitely imagine, and I know what you mean. Like it's much easier to mix when it has a sort of that analog imprint, if you will. Yeah,
Hmm.
definitely. May I ask you a question? This is a little bit left field because we were now
Hmm.
talking about like mixing and recording, but do you have a tube amplifier as of right now?
You can ask me any question you like. And unfortunately, I do not have a tube amplifier right now. No.
So if you were to get one tube amp, because everybody or anybody who plays guitar, I always say, and
Hmm.
especially young guys who like are getting into modeling and stuff, it's a good idea to have at least one tube amplifier, just to have that
Yes.
baseline of like the tone, like where it all came from. So that when
Hmm.
you're feeling a little bit lost on your modeler and trying to search for tones and it's not working, go back to your tube amp, plug in, and then get reminded, oh, that's what it sounds like. That's what it feels like. That's where all the digital stuff came from, like Adam and Eve, you know what I mean? Like the Adam and Eve of guitar tone, tube amplifiers. Um, so let's just play this game for a second. So
Okay.
maybe you don't know an exact amplifier. Maybe you do. You can answer that in a minute. If you
Hmm.
don't know, tell me what sort of traits you would be looking for in an amplifier, or if there's an amp that you would, you can see yourself getting one day. What sort of stuff would you be interested in? Because I like that stuff. I can nerd out about that stuff.
So can I. Let's see. So putting myself back in the mindset of a guitar player, I like amps that are a little more transparent because we do heavy music and there's going to be distortion without a doubt. But I still want to be able to hear the individual notes in a chord with that distortion on. So I need something that can produce that. Um, I don't use as much gain as maybe some other people would. Uh, my gain has gone down tremendously. I think I would probably be good with something that would probably be more in the hard rock category, like an old JCM 800 or um, an Engel Savage, not the Savage, but the Richie Blackmore signature.
Oh, cool.
You know,
Yeah.
um, those amps, something like that. Or even the old Steve Vai Legacy amp. Those amps are more transparent sounding, even with distortion through them. You can hear the nuance of every note. And for me, it's important because when you're playing a whole bunch of notes, you want each of them to be heard clearly. And again, same thing if I'm playing several notes, let's say I'm playing a chord, I want all of those notes to ring through, even with gain. A lot of amps today, they just focus on being heavy. And if you try to do that, all the notes will just smear together. I like intelligibility. So
Yeah.
that's important for me. Um, because when I start playing guitar again, I'm going to say I'm probably still going to be doing a lot of lead stuff. It's not going to be only lead stuff, but when I do the lead stuff, I want to make sure that all the notes can be heard clearly. Um, but so yeah, I would say as far as the internals, I like 12AX7s or ECC83s, however you want to call them. Did I say that right?
I think
I
so.
haven't talked. I haven't talked guitar stuff in so long. I hope I'm not mistaking my tubes or valves. But I like 12AX7s, but I prefer 5751s. Like I said before, I switched them out in that Laney. Because there's slightly more headroom, and I like the more natural compression that I get from the 5751s. So I would probably create an amp with 5751 input tubes, and I like 6L6 power tubes because they also give more headroom. I want to get the majority of my distortion from either the distortion channel, or if I decide to use a pedal or something, I don't want the amp breaking up.
Yeah.
I want the natural sound of the guitar coming through, and then I want distortion when I add it, basically, if that makes any sense.
Dude, that's a funny subject because a lot of people, they say stuff like, yeah, when you crank that amplifier, it really opens up, right? That's what people say a lot on the internet. Yeah, that amp only sounds good when you crank it up really loud because then it opens up. The thing that a lot of people don't realize or that they don't know is that when you start to crank an amp really loud and the power tubes start to saturate, which you don't want, and I usually don't want either, is then this sound is going to make the preamp sound more muffled and dark. It's going to darken the tone because it's going to saturate that open sound of the preamp with that nice chunky low end and those nice sizzly highs. That's going to go like this. It's going to get muddy.
Mhm.
People don't realize it's like the other way around. So a lot of modern amps these days don't rely on power tube distortion at all. You know. So yeah.
I would say they don't rely on it the same way that the older ones did, but they still
Hmm.
rely on it. If you take a modern amp with EL34s and you crank it, you're going to notice the difference in the power tubes saturating, right?
Yeah.
6L6s will saturate also, but they'll do it in a different way. You'll get more headroom. On any valve amp, you're going to get that. But the old amps that people were referring to back then were usually amps like Marshall Plexis and stuff like that. They were designed to be played loud in order to get that sound. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I
It's
mean, they
it's funny.
sounded
Like,
good.
sorry.
Go
No.
ahead.
No. Go ahead.
No, I was saying they sounded good for that sound, right? It
Yeah.
sounds good for that sound. But for the sound that I like, I can't, I don't want the tubes to break up. I want to hear the natural sound of the guitar coming through the speakers, and then I want to add distortion to that and still have the natural sound of the guitar being, with the distortion. It's almost
Yeah.
like if you parallel the distortion and you can hear the distorted tone and still hear some of the clean sound coming through,
Hmm.
it it would almost be like that, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of guys like they achieve that by blending amps and stuff, which can cause a whole lot of other problems. I've done a bunch of experiments with that, but a lot of times it brings like phasing issues, like blending, like let's say a broken up Marshall with something very saturated, and
Mhm.
then use that Marshall for the articulation and the other amp, to fill it out and to make it more chunky. It's like a challenge to do that properly.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
particular thing I wouldn't do. I was just trying to make a reference as to,
Yeah. Yeah.
but that's not a thing that I would do. Yeah, but I
No.
want the distorted sound, but I still want intelligibility in the notes. If I hit a chord
Yeah.
or if I have to go through notes, I want each one to be articulate.
Yeah.
But what were you saying?
I don't remember. That's okay. It's okay. But yeah, mid range is the key. Mid range is the
Yes.
key. Like especially in the preamp, some amplifiers like a Mesa Boogie rectifier, I like them a lot, but they do a lot of like frequency sculpting, I guess, into the distortion. And in
Mm,
that case, it's like a very flubby. Well, people like to call it flubby, and it has really a
mm,
lot of character, very fat and thick. But when you play leads and stuff, it's going to sound very saturated, and you're not going to really hear the string as much as when you're using an amplifier that you mentioned, like the Ritchie Blackmore Angle, for example. I'm familiar with that
mhm.
amp. A lot of string definition, and with the Mitsubishi rectifier, for example, that's like very different. It's
Mhm.
cool, but like that's like a very different approach to guitar tone, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot where I was going, but that's okay.
Well, guitar tone, like you said, it's never ending. We could go
Yeah,
on forever about guitar tone. So,
yeah,
you've been trying out a lot of speakers lately,
yeah.
and aside from the V30, which is everyone's favorite, what other speakers have you found yourself liking?
Great question. Um, so like the tone X, and I'm like doing quad cortex and tone X captures right now, and I was thinking
Mm,
like, and that pack is going to be called Sweet Spots Volume One, and the whole idea is that I pick an amp, get the best tones out of it, and like only do like 4 captures for one amp, keep it really simple and straightforward, and then do it through my cab. And then for each amp, I'm choosing a different speaker so far. And that has led to me choosing my favorites basically. So, of course, the V30 is a favorite. How can it not be? Some people like, I hate the V30. And if you hate the V30, then you're going to have a lot of tough luck listening to rock and metal music. But fair enough. But I love it. It just works. What can I say?
yeah,
You know.
yeah.
But I've also really enjoyed the Jesus Demon, which is like
Okay.
a really metal. It sounds not too dissimilar from the V30, but it's a little bit more scooped, and it has a nice sort of roar. But you have to pair it with an amp that is a little bit more mid-range going on in order for it to work.
Mm,
So I used that with one amp. I also really enjoyed a bunch of Warehouse and Amperian. Amperian is a sister brand from Warehouse. They sent me a bunch of
mm,
speakers. And today I used the Amperian Revolution 65 with one of my Soldano amps, and it sounded really good. Really, those speakers are really awesome. So those are nice. And I also, to my surprise, really enjoy the Celestion G12K 100s.
mm.
They don't make them anymore. Those are like the K100s, as everybody calls them. They're 100 watt,
Yeah, I
and
remember those.
yeah, and I mean almost any time when I tried IRs from those speakers from a bunch of different brands and stuff, there was always something off. But for some reason, the one that I have and the one that I've been using here works really well. So I paired
Mm,
that up with my Diesel, and that sounded really good as well. So that was like an unexpected new favorite. But the greenback works. I have an EVH Celestion. I have a bunch of stuff that all sounds really good. Some are really out there. Like I have this Eminence speaker, Legend 1218 or something. Sounds really weird. So
mhm,
sometimes, I come across a speaker that's a little bit too out there, too dark or too out of balance. I like a good
mhm.
balance. But
Yeah.
yeah, those are a couple speakers that I've really enjoyed recently.
Okay. Now, I'd like to ask you the question you asked me. As far as tube amps go, what do you look for? And can you name some amps that you really like?
Sure. So what I look for is not one thing because I like and this I think that this started when I grew up using modeling platforms. We didn't really get into that, and that's totally okay. But from when I was pretty young, I never really had a tube amplifier until later when I played in that professional band. I
Mm,
got one from the previous guitarist because I joined that band before I joined it when they were already going for a couple of years, and the guy had a Koch, that's a Dutch brand, and then I started to play on a tube amp. But all those years before, I was just messing around with modeling and stuff. And then after I
mm,
joined that band, I got connected with Line 6, and I started using the Veta 2 amps. Those were also used by Meshuggah and stuff. Basically like a Pod XT in an amplifier, 200-watt amplifier with effects and all that stuff. And that made playing live really easy for me because I just had the floorboard. I plugged it in, and there we go, direct from the amp into the PA and stuff. And I was also always used to having any sound that I wanted, basically. I mean, it didn't sound amazing, but
Mm.
that concept was always great to me. And then I got my XFX, of course, and all that stuff. And I always had a lot of amps at my disposal. And then when Kevin, my friend from Ownhammer, said, "Hey, you should get a tube amplifier," for the same reasons that I mentioned a little bit earlier, like just get
Mhm.
one amp, you know?
All you need is
And
one.
then, yeah, and then that's where it happened. And I noticed, like, wow, this is great. I forgot how good this sounds and how good this feels. Modeling is cool, but this is great. It's just, modeling can never go past that point. Let's be honest. And that's okay. I always say that's totally fine. It's okay to admit that there are differences. It's okay to
Mhm.
admit that they're both great. They both have their use, you know? But anyway, that's just my opinion. They're both great, but they are different. And then I was so used to having all those tones that I just wanted, all those tones in the real world as well. And that's why I started collecting amps. And I don't rely on one single sound. And that also has to do with my channel, I guess. Sometimes I want something very beefy, saturated. Other times I want something more. Excuse me. It's 8:15, and I have two kids, so I yawn pretty quickly.
No worries, man. We're all human.
And,
I'm
and
tired
sometimes I
too.
want,
It's okay.
and sometimes I want a tone that's a bit more articulate or whatever. And I just I like going in between different sounds. I don't like being tied down to one single sound. I mean, yeah, Engel is a brand that has just really resonated with me, uh, because they make amps that are very saturated, but
Mm.
still have a lot of note definition. And they make amps that are tight, but not too tight.
Mm.
So, some amps, they're just very tight and they sound great for aggressive metal always, but you can't never get those like more fat tones out of it. But for some
Mm.
reason, with those angle amps, you can get both out of the same
Mhm.
channel without boosting it. So that's kind of cool. But yeah, I mean, the Dietzel, that's like a sort of recent acquisition. That's a really quirky amp. It sounds really weird, actually,
Mm.
but I love it. And that's a totally different sound. And, my Prometheus, Lichtlarm Audio Prometheus, it's a bit dark. You probably can't see it, but viewers of my
I heard
channel,
that amp. I heard that amp at NAM, the
yeah,
Prometheus. It sounds good.
yeah, it's nice. It's really cool. And
Yeah.
Daniel from Lichtlarm Audio is just a really nice guy, really
Yeah.
wonderful dude. And then, yeah, there's this amp over here that's really special to me. It was built by Red 7 Amplification, the Leviathan. This is the Joker edition. They custom built
Nice.
that for me with Joker graphics. And then I like my Soldanos. I like my Friedman. Like I could keep going. Also the Zuta. Let me see if I can. There's those rack amps. Let me see. Right next to that orange. There.
Yeah. The
Swedish
Zuta.
brand, Zuta. They make some killer stuff as well. So yeah,
Yeah.
a bunch of killer.
That
I
amp
mean, there's
sounds
so much great
really
stuff.
good, man.
Yeah, 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 for sure.
Awesome. Awesome. I mean, you've got a killer collection.
Thanks. Yeah, it's getting out of hand, but that's how it goes.
Hey, listen, it's a good problem to have.
I agree. I agree. Yes,
Yeah.
it's kind of
Worst
like,
case scenario, you could always sell one or however many you want and just get new ones.
yeah. I mean, I'm selling from time to time. I have to because there's not really a lot
Mm.
of space left. And that's okay. I mean, for example, when I got my VH4, I sold my VH2, which is like
Mm,
a simplified version, a bit more affordable version. But this is just
okay.
like, the flagship, so I didn't really need that anymore. I just I have to, but it's at the same time, it's not really easy to sell tube amplifiers nowadays. At least in my country, it takes quite a while before people are interested. It's a little bit of a niche market,
Mm,
which is a bit sad because I love the tube amp world and industry so much. I just love that those people are still making those things, with that old technology because they love it so much. And I really want to support that industry as well as the digital industry. That's what I'm, trying to convey on my channel. Like both is great, but let's admit that they're both great in their own ways without fighting about it.
mhm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. They both have their place.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Yeah. So tell me, please, you've accomplished so much. Where do you see yourself in the next 5 years?
Wow. Um, you know, I'll keep this short. A lot of people are really ambitious. Like
Um,
sometimes people have even asked me, like, "Yeah, when are you gonna start like a guitar brand?" Which to me is like crazy because I don't see myself. My channel isn't huge. I think I have like 70,000 ish subscribers at the moment,
mm,
but I'm not really super ambitious in that I don't need to start a bunch of ventures and start a lot of businesses. I mean, there are some things here and there that might happen, but I'm not really ambitious in that I want to get more and more and get more successful because I also really just enjoy, time with my family and my hobbies. And I hope to just keep doing what I'm doing and just just continue. That would make me happy. And I don't need to, I mean, I'm busy enough as of right now, so I don't need to get even more busy. So if I can just keep doing this and hopefully entertain people and give them some useful information, that would be more than enough for me. So I'm very happy where I am right now. As long as I can feed my kids, then I'm happy, to be honest. Maybe that's a boring answer, but that's just the reality.
it's a very real answer, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you too,
Now,
man.
yeah. Now, speaking of your hobby, which is also your profession, music, are we ever going to get to hear some music from you? I know a lot of people want to know.
Well, maybe. I don't know. I mean, I'm not working on anything right now. Like once every 5 years or so, I record a track with vocals. I did one on your
Mm.
laptop, on my laptop. It's
Yes.
mine. On the Creative Devices with vocals. I put that in my description always. So if they check out one of my videos, there's always a link to that song.
Mhm.
Uh, I like it, but the problem is that I make music with my job, and then when I'm done working, I feel like just doing something else. So that's why I never really get to, you know, yeah, like back in the day before this was my job, I would like spend hours or days working on music and stuff. I do that now, but I do that in
Mm.
context of my work, like demoing
Right.
stuff, and which is great because I do get my creativity out. But
Mm.
I love other things as well, like reading comic books, which is one of my nerd passions, or watching movies, or going skating with my kids. Or so it's hard for me to say if and when that will happen. I just don't know. I want
Okay.
to, but at the same time, yeah, sometimes it's just hard to like prioritize and stuff. I'm sure you know what I mean.
I do. I definitely do. Definitely do. Man, I mean, there's so many things that people want to know. I wish we had some questions from people beforehand, but you know what? If there's anything anyone watching wants to know, put them down in the comments. I'll see if we can have Jon answer however many he is able to, because he's a very busy man. I mean, the amount of videos you pump out, I don't know how you do it. Your efficiency is incredible.
Thanks so much, man. Yeah, and if
You're
there
welcome.
aren't
You're
any,
welcome.
if there are questions, we could always do like a follow up. We can do this again, man. Why not?
Yeah, why not? I like it. I like it. So,
Me too.
do you have anything else that you would like to ask me?
Well, I can bounce that question back to you. What's your vision like for, let's say, the coming years for Creative Devices? Where do you want your company to go?
Hmm. Well, obviously, I would like for Creative Devices to become more of a recognized brand. I probably wouldn't go as far as to say household name, although that would be nice. I just want people to know that unless you want to spend money unnecessarily on something, like there are people out there who will buy a Mercedes just because of the name. I have a Mercedes, so you're going to spend the money on a Mercedes. I think Apple might be one of those things. You buy an Apple just to say, look, I spent X amount of dollars on this Apple, whatever. And if that's your thing, that's fine. But if you don't care about that sort of thing and you want to be more efficient, you don't have to spend all that money, whether it's Apple or Dell or HP or Lenovo, any company you can think of, right? And again, there's nothing bad about these companies. They all make good devices. I've owned a laptop from just about every manufacturer, and I've taken everything that I've experienced from all of them and put it into what we have now. The good and the bad, what I should do and what I shouldn't do. Again, nothing is going to be perfect. When you prioritize certain things, there's going to be trade-offs, but at the end of the day, as long as the priority is met, that's how I feel anyway. It's a win. But that's what I would like. I would like Creative Devices to be more known, because there's a lot of people out there that I meet that have never heard of Creative Devices, or other people have talked to us about and they've never heard of us. And I get people that message me every now and then. Oh man, I wish I knew about you sooner. I just spent all this money on this laptop and I don't even like it, or this and this and that, or can't even do this, or whatever the situation may be. I feel bad, but there's nothing I can do. So I'm thinking, well, why didn't they know about us? So we're gonna figure out some ways to try to help get the word out some more, and hopefully people won't have to spend unnecessary money on stuff.
Cool. Well, stuff like this, like the podcast, that's all really nice. I mean, that's a great way to get the word out there, and to also have a little bit of fun and talk to creators about how they use your products and stuff. So I think you're doing a great
Yeah.
job with that as well.
Thank you.
And I
You
wish
know,
you
I
all the best and all the success, because as I've said a bunch of times already, I love Creative Devices. What can I say?
and Creative Devices loves you too, man.
Thanks.
You are, listen, everyone I know that knows you, whenever we have a conversation, you always come up. And everyone says the same thing. Jon is the best.
Oh, thank
Yeah.
you, man.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're very welcome. Listen, I want to take this time to truly thank you for coming on here. I know it's late where you are, and like you said, you were with your family, and you probably want to get to bed. So, thank you for taking this time again to have this conversation. You and I can talk anytime. We can schedule something else. If anyone wants to know anything in particular, like we said before, please put it in the comments down below. Jon, looking forward to seeing you later on this year.
You too, man. And thank you so much for having me, and keep doing the great work that you're doing. You're the man.
Thank you. No. All right. Have a good one.
Thanks, man. Cheers.
Cheers.